As you probably know by now, there are all kinds of opinions people have about Deion Sanders, and they use a whole variety of words to describe him. The most famous being prime time or Coach Prime. But other words pop up like confident, disciplined, charismatic, cocky, innovative, threatening, controversial, and on and on. But underneath it all, he has business savvy. And he understands the power of narrative and story to build a winner. You see, Coach Prime knows people never buy the product. They buy the story attached to it. And Coach Prime is a great story, and you can be a great story too. Welcome to the Live Truly Free podcast.
Wow. Yeah, that's what I want. I want what Coach Prime has. But how do you get it? I mean, I've never really seen myself as a storyteller.
Sure. And that's okay, because most of us don't feel like we're storytellers. And I'll bet Coach Prime wasn't very good either in the beginning. So let's develop your company story. And to do that, I'd like to look at a couple of examples.
Beginning with Coach Prime, I'm hoping.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, well, of course we're going to begin with Coach Prime.
Great. You also said that he has business savvy, but how do you know? I've never really heard anyone describe him like that, and that's not usually the commentary you hear on Saturdays.
No, it's not. So let me give you some facts. Since December, so that's when he signed on with Colorado, merchandise sales at the school for Colorado merch are up 700%. All the games sold out, and donations to the Buffs are up almost 50% to $28 million. And that's probably a month-old data. Everything is sold out. Nobody can keep up with the merchandise. This isn't an accident. This doesn't happen accidentally.
All right, so they're getting good business results, but how does that business savvy tie to his story?
Here's the key, is that when we start with business savvy, we're kind of reverse engineering back. So it started with a great envisioning narrative he had, and which we talked about in last week's episode. And then that narrative comes out of who he is, which is his creation story. And the key is that the story is what's selling the product. And so let's get into his story a little bit and see what we find out.
Okay. And I know that he's a football player. He played baseball. He was a really confident football player, one of the best at his position of all time. Showtime, very flashy. He was in all the headlines when he was a player and all of that. It was before my era, so I wasn't really familiar with him. But I knew who he was. And so I didn't really hear much about him again until like 2021 when he takes over Jackson State. But apparently he'd been writing his story well before that.
So here's the key to all of that, AJ. He's a winner. I happen to know this. Okay, not off the top of my head. I'll read it. He's won 8 Pro Bowls, 6 first-team All-Pros, made consecutive Super Bowl appearances on 2 different teams, 49ers and Cowboys, and winning both. You're right. And then he disappears. Where does he disappear? He starts coaching in 2012 at Prime Prep Academy in Texas. What? What's that about? And then he goes to AAA Academy, and then he goes to Trinity Christian School. He's following Shador. That's what's going on here.
So he didn't start as a big coach. He just started coaching his son.
Yeah, he started coaching his son. He was head coach at the first 2 small schools, but then when he got to the high school level, they made him an offensive coordinator. Now, here's what's fascinating in his story, and it's buried deep in a Slate article. Sanders calling to Jackson State. He had a calling where God called him to lift up historically Black colleges. This is so important. I talk about it in my book, The Next Level Entrepreneur, that you have jobs and then careers supersede jobs, but callings are above all of that. And callings may or may not even be a career or a job. In his case, he got this calling, and does 2 things. It gives him great vision and huge motivation. And he's a believer in God. And so you're right. He goes, he was actually appointed in 2020, and he coached the 2 seasons in 21 and 22. Now, that would not make any difference at all, except for one fact. He won 2 SWAC championships back to back.
And that's off of being a high school offensive coordinator.
Yes.
He wasn't even the head coach. So Jackson State took a gamble on him because he probably interviews very well, I would say. They took the gamble on him, and he was just an offensive coordinator at a high school. And that seems to be kind of what people doubted him at Colorado as well, as they were like, oh, you could do it at an HBCU, but you're not going to be able to do it in a Power 5 school. So it just seems like this calling's kind of helping him transcend what he's writing a unique story that no one's ever seen before. So everybody else is kind of doubting him as he's on his track to making a story.
All right. So let me bring in the business savvy into the story, because this is about when it happens. So he's at an NFL Network event, and he meets this lady who's doing the marketing sponsorships or something. Her name is Constance Schwartz-Morini. She will become his business partner and manager. Now, Sanders calls her a visionary and a pit bull in pumps. And they are turning things upside down. Now, here's what I'm inferring, okay? Because I've been in this environment. I get it. She's a visionary, which means you have to have an envisioning narrative. Now, she's on the business side, but she's a pit bull. And you need both. You need to have clear vision, and you need to be like a pit bull. That's a dog that's just going after it. No holes barred. Nothing's holding you back. Now, that's as he's going to Jackson State. Okay.
And so she's who helped him elevate that narrative. And
what I think is she is oozing with business savvy.
That's what I was about to say. Is he really just a great storyteller and motivational leader, and the business savvy is actually her?
No. Here's the point. You can learn business savvy. And he's learning business savvy. And he learned it at Jackson State.
And it's coming naturally to him because he's already such a good storyteller. He's picking it up pretty quickly.
Right. I don't know that he's a great storyteller. I think he's a great narrative teller. And
okay, I can agree with that.
Here's what I think is going on. He loves football. He eats, breathes, lives football. And his sons are doing the same thing. And he's disciplined. That's the one word everyone uses to describe. He knows what it takes to be a winner. And you keep getting core principles, or what I call in my book, guiding principles, when he talks about like the Colorado State University coach disses him, and he goes, "We never talk about anybody. We just play the game." That's a core principle. And then he said,
actually, I want to add something to that is we just work hard and play the game on Saturday. Like,
right.
He emphasizes hard work, and he always talks about stories of seeing his dad go to work or his stepdad go to work, and just like, you got to put on your working boots, you're putting on your uniform, right, and you come here to work. And he always emphasizes that. I think that's one of the key motifs that you're talking about.
Right. And then he added, and now it's personal. Yeah, we're recording this on the Friday before the Colorado State game, so we don't know how it comes out. But I think Las Vegas is all in on Colorado from what I'm seeing.
After that comment, the odds probably.
I'm not giving Colorado State much chance here. So anyhow, y'all can leave comments when we post the video and tell us how it really turned out. So here's the thing. Is business savvy is learned. You don't have to be a business expert, and he's created a business kingdom. according to one writer, along with Constance Schwartz-Morini, because she's his partner in it. And so you're seeing him on national ads. They're building his brand. Now are coming the sweatshirts and T-shirts and hoodies and all the stuff.
Yeah,
Okay?
the media blitz they did is like perfectly timed too, because now the commercials are all coming right as college football season starting. And Constance also, she has to believe in that narrative too to go and bat for this, because if she's like, okay, I'm gonna shoot you all these KFC commercials and whichever insurance company he was with and all of that.
Aflac.
It was Affleck. Okay, I knew it was blue. I didn't know which one it was.
You haven't seen the newest ones yet, have you? Where he brings in a buffalo instead of a goat?
No, I didn't see that one.
And Saban says an elephant would have been better. So look, here's the thing is that none of this is accidental. That's what you're saying. None of this is an accident.
She believed they were going to win those games and that these commercials would be hits. They
don't know that. They don't know how the season's going to go, but they know the narrative and they believe it. And this is the most fascinating thing. The AD director at Colorado says about Sanders and Constance that they are all in and totally behind Colorado. Multiple schools were recruiting, trying to get Coach Prime to come to their program. He chose Colorado. Now, I haven't dug into all the whys and wherefores on that. But the alignment of thinking from the top down is so important, and having control of the program the way he does.
Yeah, that's an interesting part of that. And I want to dig a little more into that because, we hear all the quotes about why he's being a coach and why he's elevating his team and all of that. But I don't hear that much of why Colorado, why Boulder. Maybe it's because they won one game. So it's like, okay, I'm going to the bottom of the Power Five and I'm going to show you guys I'm a real Power Five coach because I can take a team from the bottom to the top like that.
The one thing I've read is there was the alignment with his thinking and the AD.
That would make sense. And that's probably just like Constance and kind of what we've talked about last week too, is he's just such a great leader, is he knows what people to put around him and how, when you find excellent people, how to make them be the best version of themselves. And he probably saw that in the AD.
So let me pull us back into because
we
so in all
candor, on a million side tangents.
Right. So in case y'all didn't hear this in a previous podcast, AJ and I agreed that we were both going to become Colorado Buffalo fans, like way back in March or sometime. We've got to go check our text thread.
We're fans of rival teams otherwise. So.
Yeah. Otherwise, we're on opposite sides of the field. So we united. That's good. We won't mention the other teams. But the point is that we've been believing Coach Prime since early this year. Okay.
Yeah.
So hence we could go on and on and on about this, and we won't. So on page 118 of my book, The Next Level Entrepreneur, there's a letter to Max. Check out the book on Amazon, but it's a book of letters between Mr. A sage, and a young entrepreneur wannabe, Max. Okay. Here's what Mr. A tells Max. The next level navigator, that's the strategic process in the book and the strategic process I've used throughout my leading companies. The next level navigator works because it is anchored in story, beginning with yours. Every ongoing entity carries the imprint of its founders and current leaders, whether they realize it or not. When this process is used, the next level navigator, with an ongoing company, it relies on the history of the company while considering the impact of its key leader's story upon it. When it's used for a new company or a fresh business venture idea, it focuses on the personal history of the founding entrepreneurs. Trust me, Max, for if your company succeeds, your imprint on it will be huge. That is why knowing who you are and your story is so important for your company to begin well. Therefore, why not be intentional with that imprinting?
That's everything we've been talking about for the past 1.5 episodes.
Yeah, there it is. It's so AJ and I have recorded the audiobook and we're furiously working to get the final edits done. We thought we would have had it done months ago. This is a much bigger project than we realized, but we are going to have it out soon. We'll keep you posted. And it's available right now in print on Amazon. So there's a couple of key things here, and that is knowing your story is key, and knowing who you are, and having an envisioning narrative. And so in the Next Level Navigator process, it begins with the envisioning statement. And I would argue that's the hard part, to come up with that.
And that's what we're struggling with, is we're relaunching our company right now too. But I think the key part of the quote that like stuck with me the most was when you said you're going to, like, it's basically, if the company succeeds, the founder is going to be a huge part of that. So you might as well be intentional at the beginning of how the founder is going to leave their imprint, because there's no company that achieves success and the founder's imprint isn't seen and his culture and his presence isn't spread throughout the organization. So to be a founder, you should be intentional about what you're doing when you do it at the beginning.
Yeah. And you can just look at football programs. You can look at companies too, and you can see the successful ones understand that principle. And you can see the unsuccessful ones are willy-nilly about the imprint they've got. Coach Prime totally gets it. He's intentional, and it's not about just, I'm going to teach the kids how to do hard work and stuff like that. He's got a narrative that he envisions what not only the program becoming, but who the football players, what these young men can become. That's his real calling.
Yeah. He's envisioning the impact that these young men are going to have on the world.
Right. So
and what the football field is going to teach them or give them the platform to do so.
So who believed the narrative first for Colorado?
I'm going to say probably Deion.
It has to be him. Think about it. I've met business owners that don't believe their own narrative. They don't believe it's going to work. If you don't believe, who else is going to believe? Nobody. You have to believe in you first. You have to get your envisioning narrative going. And it begins with your creation story. So AJ, let's jump to you, because as you said, you're a little awkward on the storytelling. And you and I have had some conversations on your company outside of the podcast. So I want to kind of replay a little bit of that for the audience. Yeah. So when you started, once you had your product and you're going out, this was a year ago, pitching your product, what was the story you were using?
Oh yeah, this was a great one. I would say we have this great new shoulder rehabilitation device for the internal and external rotation of your shoulder. You can use it in two different ways, seated or supine, lying next to it to work two different angles of that internal and external rotation. And the goal of this is to help patients recover faster and use this after the clinic so that they can continue to recover their internal and external rotation, which is what happens to re-tear the most.
Okay. Yeah, part of that was kind of like sounding like Greek to me. I don't understand a lot of those words.
I'm like, I hope people aren't leaving the podcast as I'm saying all of this.
Yeah. We'll speed that up. Okay, so here's the thing is those are data points. That's not a story. And that's where everybody starts. Everybody starts with, we want to tell the facts. We want to tell the data points. And that's not what people buy. People buy the story. So let's kind of go through, so that was a year ago, and you got a lot of feedback on your device. What happened?
Yeah, feedback. Now that when you start looking back at it, we were able to get a little bit of traction, but for the most part, people were uninterested. They weren't excited. That I would never say anybody ever got excited about our product.
Right.
And that it has to be from how I was pitching it being has to be the biggest issue, because who's going to get excited when somebody just tells you that whole 25-second spiel I told you, spewing data points at you. I when I look back at it, it's like, wow, that wasn't exciting at all what you just said.
Right. Okay. So what we're doing here, guys, is we're looking, I'm kind of sifting through what happened because I want to develop a story here. AJ and I have talked about this, and we referenced last week he did the pitching competition almost now a year ago. And so coming out of that, and you've now reformulated the product, what do you envision? What do you envision? What does AJ envision for this company?
We're able to get the shoulder rehab space to be innovative again. That would be the most concise way I can put it. We want physical therapists to stop relying on all the old practices they have been doing and kind of just being okay with the status quo of this is the shoulder rehab we do. And then when patients leave, the shoulder, just because it's a complex joint, it hurts itself a lot. We want to push back on that, and we want to give them a new device that offers a chance to stop the cycle of re-injury and give patients control of their rehab and give physical therapists a new innovative tool that they can use to disrupt their industry and start helping their patients even better.
Right. And that's what we talked about last week, about how entrepreneurs are disruptive. So what's happened here is, AJ, you've been on a journey for a year now, or more, actually more.
About a year and a half, actually.
Yeah, a year and a half, from the original device to completely changing it, and to a new device, reforming the company. And what's shifted is the story. In the year and a half that you've been in this, you've seen that the way shoulder rehabilitation has been done for years hasn't changed at all. It's the same process. And you're excited now because what you want to do is raise the game with a device that's easier, simpler, more efficient, all sorts of things. And we don't want to say, like in the story, what you envision, which is changing an industry, because that's disruptive. We want to bring as many of these therapists along in the story.
And that's kind of the biggest challenge I'm facing, and how I'm trying to craft this narrative is, how do I say all you physical therapists are doing the same thing and I can see the results aren't working? You need to change something. I need to open their eyes to that fact without making them make it seem like I'm like, all these physical therapists are lazy and they don't want to change anything.
I think you said it pretty well a minute ago. And it was about, it would make their lives easier. It would make their rehab of clients better. You also said, and these two pieces work against each other, I want to have the patients in charge. Well, if the patient's in charge, does he really need the physical therapist? I think you could argue yes, and you might be able to argue no. It just depends. Or you need the physical therapist for the first part, but this is something that the person can continue to do to continue strengthening their shoulder. So go ahead.
That's a piece of the narrative that we're also playing with, because we also, when I'm saying take control, it's not the right word. It's not the right combination of words to try to say what I'm meaning, because I want the patient to be able to go to the clinic and then leave the clinic, and from there they have it from there. As we're talking about this, it makes you realize, like, as you're crafting this narrative, each element, each set of words, each even word matters a lot, because each word you're saying, each phrase you're saying is evoking the emotion in the person. When I spew the data points, I'm evoking boredom, and I'm evoking, oh, I got to go do this later today. They're going away from me with that. I need words that evoke interest and excitement and belief that, oh, we can make a change here.
We'll leave it right there where you said emotion, because if you can make an emotional connection, you're selling a product, you want to sell it with a story around it. And part of the story is the development of the product itself. And getting people using it, and you're still in the early stage of the story writing too, because you've got to get some wins, you've got to get some testimonials, that sort of thing. And as you get those, you're going to get more words, you're going to be building the story.
Yeah.
And that's what, see, the problem with Deion is he's had, 14 years in the NFL. He's had 12 years coaching. So he's got 26 years. Well, you're not even 26 years old. All right. And so it's like, you're starting out, but look, you're headed in the right direction. And what everyone needs to do is listen to this and just start thinking about, what is your creation story? Who are you? What are you about? And then what do you envision for the future, whether it's for your company, whether it's for an entrepreneurial idea you have, maybe you're a creator, whatever it is, start looking at it that way. And honestly, my book has got the whole first part of the book will help you sort through, what is it that you are? Who are you? What are you about? All those sorts of questions. So for more on this and how entrepreneurs disrupt, take a look at last week's podcast. I know you're going to love it, and we'll see you next week. And until then, may you live truly free.